Welcome to this special edition of the Delivery Profits, brought to you by the Delivery World, together with Avico's Super Crunch, the ultimate fries for delivery. We're so grateful for all you out there who tune in regularly for this podcast. Without you, we're just a bunch of guys and gals talking to each other in a recording studio. I'm Peter Bachman, and today, together with John Borzichiello, we'll take time to talk about delivery in general and what we have learned from our various guests over the past year or so. So, John, we've been running now for over 2 years on this show. We're at the start of 2025, and in the last year, we've interviewed a dozen people. We must have learned something.
I hope so, Peter. Firstly, Happy New Year, Mr. Bachman, to you, and I'm sure from us to our listeners.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you, and I reiterate a Happy New Year to our listeners around the world.
No, definitely. I think the last 12 months have been fantastic, to be honest. We've done lots of these podcasts now, and they're all learnings, aren't they? We're learning ourselves every time we do one. We're getting some real good opinions from different people within the industry, from an operator, from an MD, chief operating officers, European MD in there, I believe.
And we've spoken to delivery aggregators, we've spoken to operators, we've spoken to ghost kitchen operators, we've spoken to high-end, I would say low-end, mid-spend, value-end. We've covered an awful lot. And so I'm sure within it there are these lessons, there are common themes, and there are different ways of looking at the market.
Definitely. We went, if you remember, up to Manchester, March 24, was it? Where we met Mark Murphy from Burgerism. And for me, that was a really interesting one, that Mark and his team have concentrated on Manchester. Rather than go multi-site in different cities, they've stayed in Manchester. And it's all around delivery for them. How do they make sure that any part of Manchester or the suburbs of Manchester, you can get delivery? And that, for me, was a real eye-opener, to be honest, the way they're doing business.
Yes, we recorded that at the Northern Restaurant and Bar Show, which was great fun.
No, definitely.
Really, really good. Yes, absolutely around Manchester. But we also interviewed Josh Simons, who runs Chicken and Blues in the Bournemouth area. So he's also concentrating on a particular area. And our guest, Will Beckett, talked about neighbourhood. So locality may be a theme about delivery that we haven't really explored too much.
Totally agree with what you're saying. From all of those examples there, is it to concentrate on a set area, a set suburb maybe, rather than being a business that has lots of different sites over lots of different cities, one site in one city? Can they then get delivery across that city? If you were looking somewhere at Leeds and you had a site, and look at Leeds and I pick that example because you've got Headingley, which is the huge student area up in Leeds. If they've got a city centre restaurant, how then can they get delivery out to Headingley, for an example?
Yeah, I think there is quite a lot in that, absolutely. But maybe there are other lessons we've learned as well. And I don't know how you would see those lessons pitching out, but I think, to me, an important element about delivery is technology. We interviewed Edin Bazic who founded Firenze in an earlier life, and a lot of our guests, Matt Price at Uber, for example, have also talked about technology. So that is another underlying element of the whole delivery space.
Definitely. Technology is something that's growing, isn't it? Every time there's something new comes out, it's old, because that space is growing. Like Matt said, at Uber, they're looking at a whole solution, not just food delivery, but delivery in general, delivery of people in Uber cars. They're now trains, they're doing flights. So the technology piece, or the apps in the background that are making this type of business work, it's only going to go somewhere. It's going to get bigger and bigger. And if you remember, just before Christmas, Keith Bird came on, and we spoke about when the first delivery came to the UK, and I think it was 94 from memory.
I think you're right.
Hopefully. I'm sure Mr. Bird, on our 10th anniversary meeting with him, will come back. But look how far we've come in 30 years, from when it was just literally being delivered out of a local restaurant, food delivery, to like you say, technology 30 years later, we now have smartphones where we can just deliver. Yeah, we can just go on and get whatever we want from Deliveroo, from Uber, from Just Eat, from X, Y, and Z.
You made a number of points actually just now, but I wonder whether one of them is constant evolution in this sector. It's been a period of constant evolution. And again, taking up a point that Keith made, that forecasting the short-term future is fine, the longer term is much more difficult. So we've been through a period of constant evolution. Therefore, the assumption may be that we're going to carry on with this evolution, but perhaps we're not. Perhaps we're at peak evolution now, and from here on, it becomes much more, changes occur, but at a slower rate.
Definitely. Well, look at what Will Beckett said from Hawksmoor. Hawksmoor don't do delivery. And that was a really interesting podcast, wasn't it? Because we're about delivery, the delivery profits. But what Will said was really interesting is he doesn't have plans, or they don't have plans for Hawksmoor to do delivery. It's not what they're about. They're about experience. So that's a really bold statement as well in this big delivery piece, and diversification of restaurants, diversification of operations. They're not going to do that. So they're not in that space. Whereas when Shireen came on back in January 24, Buns at Home, it's a really important part of their business to do the delivery. But if we look at the difference in those two businesses, of the Hawksmoor is the experience of going in, getting that steak that you don't have at home, the whole big piece around getting the wine to go with it, having a Hawksmoor beer, there's cocktails. Shireen's business with Buns at Home is around grabbing a bun on the way to work. They have little sites. They're not sit-in sites. So their delivery is much more important to them. When she came on, she talked about lunchtime. So going back to your point, there's so many different points in the industry that it all works together.
Yeah, and sort of allied to that, but going slightly in a different direction, ghost kitchens, which people on both sides of the Atlantic suggest is not what people thought it was. There are still opportunities there within ghost kitchens if you think them through properly, which is what Mate Kuhn from Growth Kitchen suggested to us with his model that makes use of unused kitchen space in pubs and hotels and wherever.
Definitely, that was one, wasn't it? That was almost that eureka light bulb moment for me, what they're doing, because they're giving almost an opportunity for a pub that can't do food, doesn't have the ability, doesn't have the desire, or doesn't have the customers to do food. They can then use that kitchen space and deliver out. The two brands that they're working with, which he spoke about, was Cockfighter and the Athenian, which London-centric, people know those brands. But up in, was it Warrington? Was the one that we use. Warrington. So again, a shout out to the people of Warrington that Mate said. But they can have now the Athenian and Cockfighter. And interestingly, he's also talking to other brands, and hey, let's see what 2025 brings for Grove Kitchen, because it's an exciting concept. It's a different to anything else that's really out there in the market. They've took it, and I think those guys will go a long way.
I think you're right.
What's important to them, though, Peter, as well, and we haven't touched on, we did our own little episode at some point around packaging, if you remember, and products that travel, and packaging's really important for the likes of Mate and Grove Kitchen, because they're putting as you called it at the time, I believe, it's almost a franchise model. Well, they need to get everything absolutely nailed before they can roll that out.
Yeah, but I think it's not only ghost kitchens, it's anybody who's doing delivery. The product has got to end up on the customer's plate in the form that the restaurant would like it to be there. The right temperature, the right consistency, not being slopped around, all of those things, hugely important, and making sure that if I dare say it, the fries are delivered in the right level of crunchiness. All of that is hugely important, because the customer is not in the environment, in the restaurant environment. The experience is not the same. The product is the thing that probably carries the message.
We spoke about that, didn't we, at length in one of the episodes around the product carries it. all of this, Keith summed it up, is around what the customer requirements are. What does a customer desire? Because they're ordering a delivery because that's what they're wanting. Whether they're wanting it for an occasion, for a snack, for they want to have a chilled out morning at home, they won't want to get up and go to a shop. So Keith summed it around what does the customer require. If they didn't want it, they wouldn't order it.
Right, absolutely right. So I think we've been talking for a bit longer than we actually set ourselves the target. But I'd just like to mention a couple of other things that I'd noticed. And one is that delivery is normally seen as making products suitable for people to eat at home. But Maurice Aboudi from K10 also explained to us that it can be about the corporate expenditure, the larger occasion for feeding a larger number of people. So it's not just about preparing food for 1, 2, or 3, 4 people, but for tens, 20s, even in some cases, hundreds of people. And delivery is multifaceted in that respect. So that was one point. And the other point is that, and I think Gavin Smith from Pizza Pilgrim talked about this, the need to embrace the customer and to have the right delivery partners to do it. In general, delivery does not work unless all parts of the chain, that's the customer, the restaurant, and the delivery app, all work in harmony.
100%. And on that point, we've spoke to a lot of these guests around the aggregators, around the, let's call it data, but not go into it, the ownership of customer, what the customer gets from what they order to what they deliver. But that comes back that, as you said, Peter, the product carries the weight.
Right. So we've been talking for quite a bit. My question to you, and you can ask me the same question, is out of all of that, what 3 things, or maybe 5, maybe 500, I don't know, but let's think about 3 things have you learned as being important learnings from what we've been talking about?
Number 1 is Keith's point, where the customer is what it's about. The customer is, as we've just said, they wouldn't order if they didn't want to. They're ordering takeaway for a reason. They're ordering delivery, for a reason. With that, it's around an operator ensuring that they get the goods they want to that consumer. So it's consumer needs in there, or requirements would be my first point. You know, the number 1 point there around what the consumer wants, but to drop experience and to drop still the Dishoom almost experience is, it's there, isn't it? Yeah, they're doing it well.
Okay, so let me throw in...
I was going to say, what about yourself? Where are you on your first one?
Well, not necessarily the highest on the list, but something that's come out from the people we've interviewed is this idea of focusing on your neighbourhood. And I think you can define neighbourhood as being the market that you want to serve, but a local market has got its own special needs, requirements, and advantages. So focusing on your neighbourhood is something to consider.
Will made a good point, didn't he, there with the paella on that occasion?
Yes.
Interestingly, when we had Matt Price on from Uber, he led the conversation very differently to any other guests that we had on, because he's an aggregator. The company that he works for, is an aggregator. Their whole mission is to connect people with solution, whether it's food, whether it's, again, an Uber ride. So that was really interesting for me. They see themselves as a partner, and partner was mentioned more times than I can remember in there. So they're not an aggregator, they're a partner to a restaurant, but also a partner to a customer, the one that they pick their phone up and it's a whole solution.
So my second one, you don't have to do delivery. In fact, you shouldn't do delivery if it doesn't meet your core aspirations, how you've positioned your company. So you don't have to do delivery.
Do you know what? I love it. I love that one. Perfect, isn't it? And what about your third, Peter?
My third one is never give up. So I think ghost kitchens do have a future. It needs to be thought through because it's essentially a financial consideration. People who invest in ghost kitchen sites would say it's a property related issue, but it's a financial issue that it drives the whole growth kitchen market. So you mustn't write it off. There is a future for ghost kitchens.
Okay.
Maybe we have a little break now.
Yep.
Before we come back with our considered short list of things we've learned. So with that in mind, if you're enjoying the show, please consider supporting us by leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Your ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help more people discover our content. Plus, it's the best way to show your appreciation for the hard work done by the Delivery World team, the Avico team, and our fabulous guests. So go ahead, hit that 5-star button. There are full instructions in the show notes. And let's finish off with today's top learnings. So, John, we've had quite a wide-ranging discussion over what we've learned over the past year or so. What would you say is your top learning?
My top learning, I think, goes back to the whole customer experience and what the guest requires. So they go to a restaurant and they have a restaurant experience. They know that. But in delivery, we've seen that operators can give a home experience at home. It's not a restaurant and it shouldn't be taken as a restaurant. An example, and we've managed to get to the second half of the show before we've mentioned Dishoom, Peter, which I think is a record. But the Dishoom unboxing of the kit, it is exactly what it says it is on the tin. Buns at home is exactly what it says. It's buns. It's not complicated. It doesn't need to be complicated. So do what the customer wants.
Okay, you have one short sentence to capture all that. What is it?
Don't overcomplicate anything for a customer. Give them what they want.
Okay, so one of my learnings from the last year is that despite its many advantages, you don't have to do delivery.
Why is that, Peter, really?
Because if it doesn't meet your aspirations, whether they're financial or in terms of matching the offer to the values and proposition that you put out, or because of the complexities, any of those can be sufficient reasons for not doing delivery, set against, obviously, the advantages. You can't just say, I'm not doing it because.
I don't want to do delivery, so we're not going to bother doing that one. No, and that's a really good one as well, being honest to yourself, I guess, and your business. Go on then, Mr. Batman, you must have a third one to throw in there.
Well, this is a bit of coming from the outfield, but basically there is reason for focusing on your neighbourhood, making sure that your brand connects with the people that are actually in your neighbourhood rather than in the wider world.
I like it. So almost like when we went up to the NRB and we've seen what was happening in Manchester.
Yes. What I'm not saying is you must focus on your neighbourhood, but there is advantage in being able to focus on your neighbourhood.
No, definitely. And I think that's the perfect one to finish, to be honest on it. 3 great learnings that we've had. We're now in 2025, and like anything, we're going from strength to strength, hopefully, with lots more guests to join us this year.
Yeah, we've got a great lineup in the future.
It'd be great, won't it, if we get that Mr. Shoe on eventually.
Well, we will see.
Deliveroo, if he's listening.
Yes, I'm sure he is, and we look forward to welcoming you. John, best wishes for the new year for you and for Avico, for your family.
Thank you. And to you. I think it was going to be a really interesting 25 to move into.
Here's a reminder that whether you're a delivery company, a marketplace app, a technology company, a restaurant owner, an investor, or simply someone who loves to order takeout, the Delivery Profits is the perfect way to stay informed and ahead of the curve in the world of food delivery. You'll find us on Spotify, Apple, or on the other places where you normally get your podcasts. And please support the show by leaving a 5-star rating. Your ratings and reviews help more people discover our content. And there's more at www.thedelivery.world/The Delivery Profits. Tune in to the next edition of the Delivery Profits for the insights, interviews, and analysis that will keep you ahead of the game in this exciting and ever-evolving industry.
Peter, just before you say goodbye to our listeners, I'd like to thank you for the last 12, 24 months for pulling all of this together. Mr. Batman does a lot behind the scenes that nobody sees. So thank you from myself and from Avico and from the Delivery World. to yourself for all that work.
That's fine. That's very kind of you, John, and it's very generous. And I also got to say a thank you to you, because this show wouldn't be what it is without you. And as always, we have Tim sitting in the background, making sure that we press the right buttons and that the show actually gets recorded. So thank you to Tim Alderson as well.
Definitely, thanks, Tim.
So with that, it's goodbye from today's Delivery Prophets. That's John and Tim and me.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.